It is the headline game of the divisional round. Ravens at the Bills at the time of this recording. A home dog are the Buffalo Bills, plus 1.5. Your total is 51.5. I think the absence of Zay Flowers didn't hurt the Ravens against the Steelers. But then again, the Ravens, I mean, if you were watching the Steelers in the last 6 weeks or so, it seems as though they got things confused on the schedule and thought the season ended on Thanksgiving. I think. I don't know I don't know exactly what happened there. Um, I am going to go against everything I always say, what I just said 2 minutes ago about the head to head matchups. You saw Baltimore destroy Buffalo. That was pretty much, if you remember that game, on the back, at least early on Derrick Henry. He hit the home run early, and that sort of set the tone for the rest of that night. In this one, I think that I predict that Baltimore first based on the lessons they learned last postseason, which is run the ball more. You do not have to sling it all over the place to win. I think also they based on what happened on Saturday night against the Steelers with leaning into run, run, run. Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Let's do that to Buffalo. They're slighter defensively, and we should be able to beat them up there. Sean McDermott understands that this is what's going to happen. I consider him to be a massive X factor in the AFC playoffs. He could undo all Josh Allen's greatness and everything else as a defensive minded coach. I do think that they're not priority, but their sole focus going into this one defensively is let's not get destroyed by Derrick Henry on the ground here. If you do that, minus Zay Flowers, I do suspect that the Ravens have a little more trouble than we anticipate them having. Final score in this one, 31-27, Buffalo on to the AFC title game. Hench, how say you?
Well, this is incredible. I mean, sometimes I just don't listen to you, but thank you, Pete.
Fair.
But in fairness to me, I actually couldn't listen to you because the dogs were so loud. But the last thing I heard you say was 31-27, which is almost precisely my final score with one difference. I think the Ravens get it 30-27.
Wow.
The Ravens lost, as we know, to the Raiders. They lost to the Browns, and they did see, the opposite of your Steelers, right? They said, okay, I guess we should get serious. I guess we should take these games seriously. And look, the Bills defense is not good. And the Ravens defense ain't great either. And so this game is going to go over. And I just think the Ravens defense has a better chance of making a big play than the Bills defense does. And part of that is because it's hard to make a big play against the freight train. I mean, these Derrick Henry runs where he's getting onto the second level where guys are smaller than him. Like it's insane. And, Minkah Fitzpatrick is a very good NFL player. And when he was doing his karaoke, like, I got to figure out how to take this guy to the ground who's much bigger than me. I gotta measure this in the open field. And then you forget, oh, right, he's going to punch me in the head. You watch defenders trying to gauge how, like that poor Green Bay DB that Dallas Goedert beat up all the way into the end zone. You watch these smaller DBs go like, how am I going to get this guy on the ground? And while you're thinking about it, Derrick Henry just punches you in the head. Like, whoa, I forgot. This guy's allowed to hit me. That is not a penalty. You can punch him in the head if you have the ball. Anyway, I just don't see the Buffalo defense making enough plays. And I do think that weird way we've seen some bad Bengals loss. The Bengals lost at home against the Bills. The Bills' poor performance at home against Skylar Thompson and the Dolphins. I think if it gets tight, the pressure shifts to the home team and the sad fans and the sad history. So I think even the great, and I mean, obviously, I think it's an awesome matchup. Hopefully, will be a one-score game in the fourth quarter between the 1-2 finishers in the MVP race. And I think the guy who is going to win the MVP is going to lose this game, and that's Josh Allen.
Fascinating stuff there, Eddie Spaghetti. How say you here? By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you before you even get going there. The other thing that got kicked down the road, literally and figuratively, by 1 week is the presence of Justin Tucker. He was not put in a high leverage spot in the wild card round. We still don't know what that cat's going to do in a big spot in this year, the worst year of his Hall of Fame career. Eddie Spaghetti, how say you?
Yeah, we're starting with the what I think is the toughest game to pick. You look at both these teams, obviously the MVP quarterbacks, one of them will win it. I think it's probably going to be Lamar. This has been the season of Josh Allen really hasn't gotten a lot of help with other pieces of the roster. I mean, Cook's had a nice year. They did bring in Amari Cooper. No one's really popped for him. It's just been the Josh Allen show. Whereas Lamar Jackson, obviously, Derrick Henry behind him, he's been fantastic. And Zay Flowers, the first Ravens receiver to make the Pro Bowl, and the defense. The Buffalo's defense has been very, very shaky, whereas the Ravens defense, well, in the beginning of the year, we all talked about it, not that great of a defense. They've been actually outstanding the last few weeks of the regular season. So I just think these teams are like kind of shifting, and I was leaning towards the Ravens, but I'm like, I don't know, man. It's so close. Like Josh Allen just keeps making these plays, and he's playing as good as anyone, and I just can't really count him out. So I'm like, what's the difference here? What's the factor? And I think I found the factor, the difference in this game. They're calling for the weather to be the high of 21 degrees, 8 to 10 mile an hour winds, which is not miserable off the lake, but a chance of snow showers. And if you look at Lamar Jackson, the coldest game he's ever played in was 27 degrees. He's played two games that are below freezing. He's 1-1, so not terrible. He's actually had pretty good stats in those games, no turnovers, which is key. Derrick Henry's coldest game was 22, so he's close to this temperature. But I just feel like Josh Allen, they drafted him on purpose. This kid that played in Wyoming, the big hands, the really freezing cold temperatures, and kind of like what you said, Shek, they're gonna focus on stopping King Henry. And I think with the weather conditions, they're gonna have to do that, which makes life a lot easier for Buffalo. Josh Allen was kind of bred for this snowy, wind, cold game, and I'm just not sure if the guy Lamar Jackson from Florida, who went to school in Kentucky, is going to be used to this. And I just think the weather makes it a lot easier for Buffalo, and I'm going to take the Bills somehow in the snow, 24-23. We're going to get a really, really close game, a thriller, and Josh Allen is going to move on.
Well, Hench said it. I said it as well. Joe Burrow did 2 years ago in the snow of Buffalo, went in there and beat them. But I agree with your larger point. Josh Allen is more wired, or at least he was, in Wyoming and otherwise, has been exposed to these conditions. Obviously, has been in Buffalo for his whole career. I do think that's a factor. I do think that if you force Baltimore to throw the ball a little bit, if Zay Flowers is hobbled at best and in street clothes at worst, that's a pretty big edge that didn't reveal itself against Pittsburgh, and they quit. They quit. The Steelers had already quit, so there's no lesson to be learned from what the Ravens did there for them to take into Buffalo. Sorry, Hench.
I kind of go the other way. If Zay Flowers had been in street clothes last year, the Ravens might have beaten the Chiefs. Like what, Zay Flowers getting the stupid penalty and then dropping the ball at the 6-inch line. If they hadn't had Zay Flowers, maybe they would have run the ball against the Chiefs last year. Like I don't think the Ravens hurt their chances of scoring if you go Likely and Andrews, you go more to tight end and you run the ball like that. Like maybe Zay Flowers being hobbled or out will force them to do what they should be doing all along. And by the way, if it's cold, you really don't want Derrick Henry coming downhill at you. I mean, that to me, is also an advantage for the team with the freight train. So
I don't want to try to tackle number 17 either if I'm on the Ravens defense. I don't think James Cook has a big day, at least as a runner. Nobody is running against that Ravens defense. And if you take a look at all you have to do is eyeball those cats out there and see like, oh, that's why, because Michael Pierce weighs about 490 pounds. That's why. All right, next. The Rams, speaking of pretty boys from warmer climates, traveling to Philadelphia to play the Eagles, who are laying 6. The total on this one is 43.5. I listen. I it's if you've listened to the show for any stretch of time, I think Matthew Stafford is headed to the Hall of Fame. Um he's only helped his case the last couple years with the way he's played. Puka Nakua and Kyron Williams have emerged in a big way in the last couple of years here. I just think this is not a great matchup for this team, and it doesn't have to do with the weather so much as how good the defense is for Philadelphia. The big question I have is, and I've talked about it as much as anybody, about QB wins and the pressure on Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. We haven't really talked that much about it in the last month where Jalen Hurts is concerned. But I do wonder on the other side of this one, if they were to let down in this game, what the conversation is. Obviously, A.J. Brown made some noise about it, and then it went away because they caught the Pittsburgh Steelers. Apparently, if you play the Steelers, then you come out clean on the other side, and all is right once you face that bum collective. But again, Jalen Hurts is, by his high-end teammates' estimation, the potential ceiling on how far this Eagles team can go. I do not think the Rams are going to be able to run on the Eagles. So that makes it about Matthew Stafford, and he is an awesome gunslinger and he has the pass catchers and otherwise. I do think that the Eagles have enough to survive this one. It's no walkover though, obviously. Eagles 28-21. Hench, how say you?
Oh, so you think they're going to cover though, right? What's that
Yeah.
number? 6 at the time of
Yep.
our recording?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. We're in different garages here for sure. I think it's a bad matchup for Jalen Hurts. If you when you watched the side by side of Darnold panicking and turtling and versus Stafford standing in, knowing he's going to get blasted. It's like part of the job. That rush is coming up the middle. My guy's not quite open yet. I got to wait another half a beat, which means I'm going to get smoked, and I'm going to put it on the money anyway. And that cat, man, I mean, the stakes go up and he gets better. And so you look at these two defensive lines and it's like, there is going to be pressure up the middle. And Jalen Hurts, when he says, I'm going to take off, he's great, obviously. But when he's, I got to get off platform and I got to start deliberating, I don't think he's very good. And, usually the team with Jalen Carter, you're like, well, they're going to have an advantage on the defensive line. But this Rams reload post Aaron Donald, it's nuts. Like that 9 sacks against the Vikings, obviously abetted by a guy who is afraid to throw the football. But I mean, Kobe Turner, Byron Young, Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, like they just come at you in waves. And I think not only is the number too big, because I don't think it's going to be a shootout. I don't think the score is going to be that high. And the lower the score, the more you want those points. The Rams get it. 24-20.
I love it. It would be a lot of fun if that happened. If, of course, the Lions then win, it's fun under any circumstances. But if you have Matthew Stafford headed to Detroit to try and get in the Lions' way of finally getting to a Super Bowl, that's a good storyline. I think people would talk about that over the coming 7 days if that happened. And by the way, as I want to talk about this, we're going to get Spaghetti's pick here, but Les Snead, I want to talk about X factors beyond the quarterbacks here in the QB league. The guys who we'll be talking about on Monday who say that's the reason that team won or that's the reason that team lost. Les Snead already is an X factor, but his work has been completed through the offseason or the last couple of off seasons. And this is something that I hope the failing teams out there, the teams that are no longer in the playoffs, will pay attention to. all this pap, this hooey and applesauce about like, well, gotta keep your draft picks. Can't do it. Well, what did the Rams do? They gave away everything to chase a Super Bowl. I said that. I said, well, the next 5 years they're going to be lost at sea. I hope they win the Super Bowl with Stafford for making the Goff deal. They did win the Super Bowl. Not that very many people in LA seem to care, but they did win that Super Bowl. And then after that, the greatest defensive player of all time, Aaron Donald, retired, and the Rams are in the divisional round. So this jive that you can't trade draft picks and all that kind of stuff has been rejected by the right arm of Les Snead, who was doing his best Derrick Henry impression, rejecting that jive,
Well,
right? I mean, that's the lesson, isn't it?
You can trade your draft picks for value, or you can just flush them down the toilet like the Patriots did with Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. I mean,
well, don't screw up the picks once you
the
have
Patriots traded the Lad McConkey slot because they were like, oh, we got our eye on a wide receiver. You guys go ahead and draft Lad McConkey, who's going to be Wes Welker 2.0. And we'll take Jalen Polk from Washington. We feel pretty good about this. And Jalen Polk Lad McConkey has 12 catches a game. Jalen Polk had 12 catches on the season on 33 targets. That's not an NFL player. Well done, Elliott Wolf. Well done. So yeah, feel free to trade your picks if you don't know how to watch game film.
That's an important footnote that Hench provided. If you do acquire draft picks, use those draft picks on good players, not bad ones. Spaghetti, what's your pick in this game?
If the NFL actually was scripted, I feel like the team that would make sense the most to win it would be like the Rams. Like obviously with the fires ongoing, playing their first playoff game, a home game in Arizona, which, great job by the Cardinals for allowing them to do that and all the fans traveling there. It's like this very underdog, gritty, like the wily old vet, Matt Stafford, and like Is McVay gonna finally hang it up for a little bit, go to the TV side, but well-rounded team. I mean, the receivers and Kyrie Williams have been great, and then as you guys were pointing out, all the great rookie selections that really improved this team, all the good young players, and especially with that last game, like their defense looked really good. They forced 2 turnovers. But then you look at this Eagles team, and they're just really a better version of what the Rams are trying to do here. They forced 4 turnovers. Again, their defensive effort was great versus a great young quarterback in Jordan Love. I'm not that bothered by the Jalen Hurts stat lines. I mean, he was still relatively efficient. He still had those 2 touchdown passes. I know he's not throwing for a ton of yards, but like, why do you need to? You're just going to pound the rock 20, 25 times with Saquon. He's going to chew up the clock. He's going to chew up yards. Their defense gets the job done. What was that game? Like 16-3 heading into the fourth. Like they weren't scaring anyone offensively, but they knew that the game was like in the bag already. They're just a really well-constructed team that has great dudes at every single level. And I'm not that concerned either with the A.J. Brown reading a book on the sideline thing. Like Jalen Hurts has been there, done that. He was a fumble away from really winning a Super Bowl. So I trust him when it matters. So if the Rams somehow pull this game off, like that's your team of destiny. That's the Super Bowl winner. But I just don't think it's going to happen. I do think though the Eagles will win, but I do think the Rams will cover the big number here, the like 6 or 6.5, wherever you get it at. I think they will be kind of in this game just because they have like that weird kind of mystique going on with them, that X factor, and they're playing really above their pay grade.
By the way, I'm glad you mentioned that. Sorry, Dave the Cynic says performative nonsense from AJ Brown, right, Hench? Reading a book during the game, surrounded by 70,000 people.
What a show off. That's like a hench move. I can't get enough of this book. I don't know what to tell you.
You bore me, Packers. All right, let's answer the question I just posed a couple of minutes there ago. The X factors beyond the QBs in the QB league. Monday morning, we will turn on our TVs or flip open the internets or whatever, and who will people be pointing at and saying that guy is the reason that team won, or that guy is the reason that team lost? Hench, I start with you.
Well, are we doing it for all the games or just
if
the
you
one?
want to throw them out, I just to
Just
me
the
the number one,
about?
the number
All right,
one
all right.
is the two.
So
I'll tell you my two. I'll tell you. I'll start it off here. One, I mentioned them both already. Justin Tucker, the Shakespearean tragedy of whatever it was. Wait, it's 2025 now. I can't even remember how many years ago it was that Billy Cundiff um, let the Ravens down and sent your Patriots to another Super Bowl. And then Billy Cundiff was shown the door, and then began the Justin Tucker era. What if Justin Tucker misses a big kick in a big spot, and that's the end of his time with the Baltimore Ravens? He looms large. And then the guy on the other sideline in that game is Sean McDermott. You know, we've seen it with Mike Tomlin and any number of other defensive minded coaches. You know, the idea I always point to now, maybe Joe Brady, the clever OC, offsets it and really has since he got there when they showed Ken Dorsey the door. No coincidence that the Buffalo offense took off after that. But Sean McDermott is predisposed to conservative approach in game, and he could cost them a game. Those are my X factors that we may point to and blame if either of those teams, well, one of those two teams, I suspect, is going to lose the game. Now, do you see what I'm talking about here, Hench?
All right, yeah. So you're saying the Bills said, "Hey, Ken, see door, leave."
Okay, pretty good, pretty good.
All right. Well, I think in that game, Kyle Hamilton to me is the freak who can make a play where you're like, how did he make that play? Like what, you know? And so I don't really feel like the Bills have that guy. And I think it is going to be one stop is going to win this game. Like, you're like, okay, how do you get off the field? And the way you get off the field is Kyle Hamilton doesn't drop the interception. Like he dropped the same interception against the Browns 5 different times. He makes a play. And so I think, as the MVPs go head to head, I think Kyle Hamilton will make the play that seals that game.
Good call.
And then, you know, Aaron Donald obviously is one of one, but like Kobe Turner, like that Rams defense, I mean, we've been talking about it for months. You know, they have really hammered some good teams, like 6 points, 9 points. You know, the Vikings won 14 games. So I do think it's that Rams D line that is going to keep it close, and I think they prevail. You know, we haven't done the other two games, but I do think, and Spaghetti knows this, Spagnuolo, you know, is basically Belichick, but it didn't work out when he got his head coaching shot. But when he's given time to prepare for a team, you know, the 2007 Patriots, you know, the greatest offense in history, and he just had time to figure out, like, I think I'm going to put Justin Tucker across from Logan Mankins. I don't think he can really, you know, like, and so he's just sitting there watching this wounded Texans team, and I think that one is going to be ugly.
Ooh, I mean, that's bold by itself. Obviously, we've covered the Chiefs' inability to cover against anybody at home. So if you think that one's going to be ugly for the Texans, that's interesting. All right, you're right. I see. I'm picking up. I could hear the gentle disappointment in your voice. Like, why Dave? Are you bringing up X factors before we even tell you who we think's going to win this game? You're right. Okay, I'll kick the rest of it till after we cover these other two games. So let's get. I just thought it would be a fun little halftime show for us to have the X factor conversation before we pick up the other two games. But all right, let's get to them. Washington Commanders, Detroit Lions. To me, by the way, Lions laying 8.5, total 55.5. That number's come down by a full point since last Sunday night. I'll tell you this. I think the Lions get this one handily 38-21. And I just think they're at two different stations and in the process, and they have both, you know, kind of reversed the ugly vibes in both organizations. What's remarkable is, or, you know, with Washington, they just drafted Jaden Daniels is all they did. I mean, this bum team with the stink on it of Snyder and all of that. This is how quickly you can transform yourself as a pro football team if you hit on the right QB. The trick is identifying who that guy is. They did a smart move by hiring Dan Quinn in there. But as you've heard me say ad nauseum, no rookie quarterback has ever taken his team to a Super Bowl. The Detroit Lions are further along in their turnaround. They're several years into the Dan Campbell era. We have talked about the fact that they are the genuine America's team. We need to root for their success here. I don't see much of a test from the commies in this one. The Lions get it and move on to the title game. If you listen to Hench, they're going to catch Matthew Stafford on the other side. Ooh, that'll be fun. If it's the Eagles, good stuff too. Either way, the Lions are going to survive this one without much of a test there. By the way, I think this is the easiest pick of the week. David Montgomery, you see how Dan Campbell, the spirit that he has brought to that team. You know they're going to try to get him a touchdown if there's any chance it's a playoff game. Obviously, that's not the priority. But if there is an opportunity to get Montgomery coming back from injury when you thought his season was over, you know they're going to do it. By the way, he's going to score 2 touchdowns, and that payout is pretty good with the juice there. Look into that one. Hench, how say you here?
All right, this is the first time this has ever happened in the history of the Shek show. And all the other names we've had, but
yeah.
I had the Lions winning, but not covering. But then you made such a strong case in your closing argument that this juror is changing his pick from Lions 31-27 to Lions
I've never
31.
been so flattered.
Lions 31-20.
Okay.
We agree that for the first time in a month and a half, the commies game is not going to come down to the final play of the game. I did think on the final play of the game, the commies were going to score to cover. But now I think you're right. That place is going to be loud. I think, Monty's going to get into the end zone. Those are all good points. But hat tip to Jaden Daniels. I mean, how smooth did that guy look? Where you're watching other QBs. I mean, Herbert throws more picks in a game than he did all season, and Jaden Daniels to me looked like he had that Tom Brady thing of like the more stressful it gets, his heart rate goes down. Like, oh, this is a 4th and 2, must convert. No problem, baby. I'm going to slide over here. I know just like, I know how big my body is and I know where it fits and I'm going to go and I'm going to lay down in front of just past the first down, but no panic, so smooth. Like, I mean that the guy holding the towel in the flag football, like he was just here and now all I'm doing is holding his towel. Like, like you're down in flag football. So, thank you to Jay Daniels for giving us our one good game last week. And by the way, real quick, I am a Dan Quinn fan in that he handed the Patriots the greatest win in Super Bowl history, but you're on your 4th kicker. I know you don't want to fumble, but when he took a 4-yard loss to set up the field goal, I'm like, we've all seen extra points missed. Like, that's not that weird anymore. And you're getting your 4th string kicker out there now from 37. Like, it could have been from 32. Like, you could have burrowed for a yard and then taken the timeout. But you went backwards. And if it had taken another half yard, that doink would have bounced out. Like, I always, obviously going back to Marv Levy, it's like, hey, feel free to get that sucker a little closer. The idea that it's automatic, even when you're on your
well, when it hasn't been automatic for your team in particular this season, that should definitely impact your decision making.
That was insane, and it won't come down to a doink as the Jahmyr Gibbs continues to be the best football player on whatever field he steps on, and I don't think that commies defense is going to have the answers.
Yeah, people say this sort of thing, but it happens to be true. I think is that if you're the Lions. I don't know how much game script and how Dan Campbell can impress this upon the team, but like, hey fellas, if we get to halftime and we can be up 10, the game's over. The commies are happy to be here. They have a devil may care attitude, so let's not give them anything to feel happy about, and they'll be content leaving Detroit with a successful season, even if we whip them by 28. Let's not give them any hope. Let's take the life away for them before we get into the locker room at halftime. Spaghetti, how say you?
Yeah, I mean, Jaden Daniels, more games in his career where the team has 0 punts and 0 turnovers, more than the combined careers of Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Montana. He has 3 games in his rookie year where the team has not done that. Unbelievable, but unfortunately, they are going to punt in this game, and I would not be shocked if there's a turnover in this game. I mean, the Detroit Lions are just outside the top 5 in scoring defense. They're a fantastic defense. Jared Goff's clearly in the prime of his career. Shek, you mentioned it. They're getting David Montgomery back. Just the boost alone in that Raucous Stadium, which, by the way, is the most expensive ticket this weekend. It's like almost $400 the get-in price
Really?
in Detroit. Yeah, so
Hmm.
that stadium is going to be absolutely insane. And obviously, with Knuckles, as they call him, coming back to pair with Jahmyr Gibbs, who, by the way, like they don't need like Jahmyr, like what Hench just said about Jahmyr Gibbs is 100% right. Like they don't even need Montgomery, but just the fact that he's playing is incredible. This team is super well balanced. They're just dying for this game in Detroit. These fans want it so badly, and I can't say enough good things about Jaden Daniels. He is elite. He is already in that upper echelon category without even winning a Super Bowl because of what he's done with this team with a slightly below average defense. Terry McLaurin's kind of back to being a true #1 receiver, but not a lot of a run game. I talked about that a couple weeks ago. Like Jaden Daniels is the team's leading rusher. They were really going for a full rebuild, and he kind of sped that process along by just being so damn good. If you want to look at props like Austin Eckler catching some swing passes because the Lions don't really defend that super well. But yeah, this should not be much of a game. So I'm definitely going to have the Lions winning here by multiple scores.
To our mutual point here, David Montgomery with 2 touchdowns. The payout isn't that juicy, plus 360. Pretty good though. Jahmyr Gibbs, if he gets combined 125 yards rushing and receiving, that payout is plus 125. I think that's a great bet to place too, given the way he is. Feature backs, man. They get there via Montgomery's injury, but Derrick Henry, Saquon, and now Jahmyr Gibbs, no coincidence that these teams are among the final 8 with one single dominant feature back.
Hey,
And
that Tommy's road playoff win against the Bucks, that must have been fun to watch for Bears fans.
oh,
Good time.
we got to
Good
have the
time.
QB redraft. We got to do the 2024 QB redraft as soon as this postseason is over with. By the way, you talk about X factors, and Spaghetti touched on it there. It doesn't really make sense that the Lions defense has been a unit of strength since Aiden Hutchinson went down and all the other guys went down on the defense. But for the record, they are statistically really playing shutdown defense or borderline
Well, the
shutdown defense.
safeties are incredible, and obviously Anzalone makes a big difference. He was all over the field against the Vikings.
But the competition is raising, so assumptions shouldn't be made about beating, less dominant teams. The Eagles will present a different level of challenge if they should get there. And let's wrap it up then with the Houston Texans, the Kansas City Chiefs. I have heard at least 1 or 2 people float a case for the Texans. I haven't heard anybody say the commies have a chance here. The number right now for the Chiefs is 8.5. Way too many points. The Chiefs don't cover in Arrowhead against anybody. The total is 41.5. I think the Chiefs are going to win this game. I think they are not going to cover this game. And for all of my talk, for the world's talk about QBs need to get a ring for the validation if they want to be in the conversation for the best of all time or best of era and everything else, it's settled hash at this point. By the way, how do we know Patrick Mahomes is better than Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson other than that he has all the rings? That's let's not overcomplicate it. It's because he beats them head to head in big games. That's why. But now all the conversation about poor Josh Allen and he's got to get over the hump, and so does Lamar Jackson and all of that. We haven't talked enough about the stakes for Patrick Mahomes. This is it. And he's not going to be in this spot again in his career. Neither are the Chiefs or Andy Reid or anyone else. They have a chance to three-peat. It's here. It's the same thing as the Patriots having one game against the Giants to complete the deed and go undefeated for the full season. Whatever else they accomplish, they're never going to be in that spot again. The Patriots, I don't know if you heard, it didn't work out for them. But if the Chiefs do this, this is history. They are now, if they win, the best team of the Super Bowl era? Probably, right? Don't they become that by winning the Super Bowl? Not a small matter to get around the Houston Texans, except for the fact, like I told you, we all watched it a couple of weeks ago. In theory, the Texans pass rush should give the Chiefs offensive line and Mahomes some trouble. Practically, though, we just saw it, and it didn't give him that much trouble. And Tank Dell's not going to be out there, unfortunately, this time. So give me the Chiefs. I think they're not going to cover because they don't cover against anybody. Give them to me 26-21. Hench, how say you?
It's funny you mentioned, it's a great point that what the Chiefs are going for is as historic as what the Patriots were going for and failed to get. But your point is well taken. Nobody's talking about it like that. When the Patriots were trying to run the table, everyone was talking about the 72 Dolphins and like Moss, beating the Giants in a relatively meaningless game, which became meaningful because of this stupid thing. And all year, it's like, I don't know, the Chiefs are the Chiefs, whatever. Not, but no accumulation of pressure on that team. And it's wild. They had the ultimate tank job, obviously, because they weren't trying to go undefeated in week 18. So they played their taxi squad. There was nobody, so the way the Chiefs know which games matter, know how to win. And of course, as we've already mentioned on this pod, the connective tissue between those two big events is, well, the team that beat Tom Brady and the Patriots when they tried to run the table had a defensive coordinator by the name of Steve Spagnuolo, and the team that's going to destroy the Texans this week has a defensive coordinator by the name of Steve Spagnuolo. And Karlaftis and Chris Jones are game wreckers. They are in the backfield. The Texans have not been able to keep CJ Stroud upright anyway. And I think it gets out of hand, it gets loud, and that Chiefs defensive line is going downhill on CJ Stroud. Mixon has had a little bit of a regression over the course of the season, playing like he's got a lot of miles on his tires, which he does. And I think it's 30-10. I don't think
a blowout, a breeze for the home team in this one. Rare for the Chiefs, but interesting. Spaghetti, how say you?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm kind of with Hench here. Not a lot of excitement in this game. I think it's going to be a Chiefs blowout win. Obviously, Andy Reid coming off the double bye. What is he, almost 30-4? I think in games like this.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I think this is the key detail. I know that everybody talks about he hasn't played the best players for the Chiefs haven't played since Christmas. Valid in a lot of situations, not with Andy Reid and his track record.
Totally.
Right.
I mean, two weeks to prepare and getting your guys healthy at this point of the season, that's incredible to have. It's really the ace in the hole. And talking about health, that is the exact opposite of this Texans team. They brought in Stephon Diggs to pair up with Nico Collins and Tank Dell, and those guys can't stay healthy. I know Nico Collins is back, but that just makes life harder for CJ Stroud. Plus, the offensive line, Laramie Tunsil, not really where it used to be. The offensive line's been an issue for CJ Stroud all season long. Stroud kind of talked himself up in the offseason, not have the season we thought he would. I don't really think the game versus the Chargers is the Texans are back on track. I think that's just a really sloppy game there by Herbert. I just don't see this really being a game, and I think the Chiefs are just too well rounded, and this is going to be unfortunately a stinker of a game. The Chiefs are going to win and cover at home, which is rare.
The Texans had 0 points at home on the fast track with a minute left in the first half. That play Stroud made on the bad snap was incredible, and I'll give him credit for it. But a good team moves the ball with their playbook. They're these are the plays we drew up, not snap it over my head. I'll have my back to the defense. I'll scoop it up. I'll roll right, heave it down the middle of the field. And to the Laramie Tunsil of it all, it's going to get loud and there's going to be some pre-snap penalties. And I think the Texans are going to spend a lot of time moving backward in that game.
Yeah, unfortunately, Yeah, I see. Spaghetti was saying, unfortunately, I guess you're saying as an objective viewer of the game, we want
Yes, it's going to be
entertaining games,
boring.
is what
Right, right, right.
you're
Yeah.
getting at there.
Yes.
All right, let's wrap it up with this. Hench, you want to throw out any more X factors and or a pick on Monday night's title game in college football at the time of this recording? Is this right now, Spaghetti? The Irish are plus 8.5 in this game. I mean, it doesn't seem right.
Well, it did drop from 9.5 where it opened. It was already bought down by a point. I mean, I saw
I
that.
know, isn't that wild though?
It's yeah. A lot of books have it at 8 now. I guarantee it's going to be probably around a touchdown, under a touchdown come game time. It's kind of what happened. It was Irish were giving a point and a half to Penn State, and then at the time of the kickoff, the Irish were getting a point and a half. I think the Vegas did this on purpose. They wanted to give a big spread. People, the public bet on Ohio State, and then people
Sure,
realized
okay.
Notre Dame is good. I mean, they said that Texas would have been like a 7.5 point favorite over them too. So not even that much difference between the two teams there. So I legitimately do not care in the least about what the spread is. It does not really factor in my brain whatsoever.
Fair. Hench, how say you?
Um, Notre Dame was getting pushed around by Penn State. I mean, dominated at the line of scrimmage. Only Drew Aller, I work with you must have worked with Morgan Murphy at Kimmel, right? Morgan
Sure.
Murphy, right?
Of course I do.
We're
Yes.
working on the Tim Allen Cat Denning spectacular, and she likes to throw the football around the writers' room, right? And so Drew Aller was it Singleton in the flat? He's under no pressure, and Singleton's wide open 5 yards away from him. So he's going to walk into the end zone for a touchdown. Morgan Murphy doesn't make me lay out in the writer's room. Like when we're 5 yards apart from each other, she puts it on me. Like I can just catch the ball in my chair. I don't like that throw where the guy's like, well, obviously I want it over here so I can walk into the end zone. I'm uncovered. Why is it low and behind me? I'll tell you why it's low and behind you. Because Drew Aller sucks. Drew Aller, like James Franklin, only guy in America watching that game who didn't figure out all you have to do is run the ball. Like the service academies understand this. Don't pass. Don't pass. You're going to win the game. He's like, no. I'm going to keep having Drew Aller throw the ball to the other team until one of them counts. Okay, the first interception in the end zone, all right, it was a hold, but Drew Aller wasn't throwing that like it was a free play. He just threw the ball to the other team and then got bailed out by a penalty. The second interception that got called back or got, a pass interference in the end zone was such a horrible call that, of course, our idiot announcer and idiot official in the booth go, that's a good call. He didn't get his head turned around. Yeah, he threw it to the two other defenders who were covering. Like, what difference does it make what this guy's fucking doing? This other guy's picking off the ball. Like, you're really calling a chicken shit pass interference penalty on the worst throw in the history of football? But Drew Aller gets bailed out twice, but he's like, fuck it. I missed a guy.
I didn't think that was that bad a call, to be honest.
I threw it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. It's triple coverage.
Okay, I just didn't think it was
and
a
the
throw.
triple coverage and underthrown.
Reward the fucking stiff. So then he's like, I missed the guy wide open 5 yards. I threw it to the other team. I threw it to the other team again. I'm not done. I'm going to throw it. I'm going to keep throwing it to the Irish until they count one. Well, Will Howard's not going to do that. And the Irish, the Ohio State has game film, presumably. I don't know what James Franklin's prep. By the way, James Franklin did the same thing against Oregon in the Big Ten title game, where every runner on his team averaged 10 yards a carry, and he lost. Why? Because Drew Aller threw an interception. Moron. He got what he deserved, but Ohio State's going to win that game by double digits. I'm sorry, Spaghetti.
You think so? I think Ohio State too. And here's my dumb, is it a metaphor, simile, whatever it is? It's a golf handicap thing. You take out the best and worst result, your best rounds. And if you do that with both teams, and this has no application here, but I'm doing it anyway. What is Notre Dame's worst loss? Obviously, Northern Illinois. Ohio State's worst loss? Obviously, Michigan. What's Ohio State's best win? what's Notre Dame's best win? Notre Dame's best win is against Penn State, and I'm not overly impressed by Penn State for the reasons you just cited there, Hench. I think Ohio State is just the
But then
better
their best
team.
win is what, Oregon, and who they also lost to? Because like I thought the whole point of this season was we're crushing the SEC, and the SEC isn't good. Like they beat Tennessee, but Notre Dame beat Georgia, and everyone thinks Georgia's better than Tennessee. See, I could play this game too. I mean, it's also like Notre Dame didn't look nearly as
Well, don't
bad.
get mad. I'm just
I'm not
throwing
getting
out
mad,
the,
but I
I'm
think
throwing out the
I think
theoretical.
like you're also we're also ignoring like how Texas was one play call away from winning that game. Like seriously,
That's a fair point.
If Texas does not like, I don't see them losing by double digits because I just don't. I just think like Texas has not impressed anyone this entire season, and if they did not run a toss on second down from the 1 yard line, like Quinn Ewers right now is not declaring for the NFL draft. He's playing a national championship game, and then like I said before, Notre Dame would still be a 7.5 point underdog in this
It's a
game.
fair point. That's a fair point. You're right.
Jeremiah Smith was a non-factor. I mean, Will Howard, Notre Dame chose Riley Leonard in the offseason over Will Howard. Those were the two targets they had in the portal. They chose Leonard over Will Howard because Will Howard just, is fine. Leonard still has the rushing ability. I don't think we've seen Will Howard kind of crumble in big spots. Like I mentioned, that loss to Oregon, and he was god awful in the Michigan game. And I think the Michigan game is the blueprint and kind of what Texas did in the second half. If you run the ball 40 plus times like Notre Dame will, I think that's a path to victory versus Ohio State. And I also do think that, PFF graded the top players from the last round in every game. And Penn State had like the highest grade players more so than any of the teams that played. Like I think Abdul Carter is going to be a bigger force than anyone in Ohio State has. Like he was in the backfield every single play, and Notre Dame did a fine enough job to kind of get by, even with 3 offensive line injuries. So I understand that Ohio State, everyone talks about their big bulky defense, but I think Abdul Carter is still the best player they're gonna face against, and I could just see the passing game being more of a use in this one for Notre Dame. Like they could target Mitchell Evans more, stay away from Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Love more time to get healthy. I just think this Freeman Bowl, this is a team of destiny, and they just kind of have this magic, which is a lame thing to say, but I do think that we've seen Ohio State look god awful in games, and Notre Dame really has not looked awful since Northern Illinois, like since the month of September. Like you could say what you want about Penn State almost winning, but again, Hench pointed out there's just miserable penalties and bad turnovers by Riley Leonard, which obviously he cannot do. But I definitely think there's a path to victory for this game, and Marcus Freeman will coach him up, and they're going to be in this game. And if they lose, oh well, I'm not going to be crushed because it's an unbelievable season that nobody expected. Marcus Freeman put this team back on the map. He somehow made Notre Dame likable, and I do think they will win a national title within the next 5 years if they drop this one, because he's now just shown that this is a program where players want to come to. He's a player's coach. He does not seem interested at all in the NFL jobs, and he's just built a great.
I was just going to say, I think you're going to love it when he's the New York Jets coach because you're from New York. So
he just said that he just said he was asked this, and he said, "I just signed a contract, didn't I? Like nothing to worry about. Like he loves this school."
Hold on, Spaghetti, hold on. You're all over the map here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this game is in the next 5 days, not the next 5 years.
Well, I'm saying if they lose by double digits, like
they're going to win a national championship in the next 5 years. You're kind of saying they're not going to win a national championship in the next 5 days. So just admit it. It's okay. You're picking.
I'm picking Notre Dame to win. I'm picking Notre Dame to win money line. I think they're going to win this game. I don't. I think. Okay. I think Ohio State.
It sounded like you were saying they're going to cover the big number, but now you're going for it. They're going to win this game.
They've been a top scoring offense and a top scoring defense this entire season. I think Riley Leonard is the quarterback I'd rather have in a bigger game. They have the more talented running back groups. I just think if they can handle Abdul Carter, they can handle whatever else, who's going to be a top.
All right, I love it. This is great because Shek thinks that playing Oregon twice, losing by 1, and blowing them out is more impressive than losing to Northern Illinois, and you disagree. Okay, next up.
I think bringing up losses, like to me, Ohio State had 2 games where they looked terrible. I don't think Notre Dame has had 2 games they looked absolutely terrible. I think they lost.
I mean, the crazy thing is Notre Dame was dominated by Penn State, but Penn State's quarterback was so bad. his statistics don't were terrible. And Drew Aller, they're like from another era. They're like when the forward pass was invented. Like
Notre Dame didn't really do anything in the Georgia game until the last minute of the second quarter, and then they turned on the second half. They're a second half team, and it's also saying like the defense stopped Aller from doing what he wanted to do. Aller also has never been really good in big games in his entire career. There's a reason why Penn State doesn't win big games, but there's a reason he did not complete a single pass to receivers because Notre Dame's DBs are fantastic, and all his passes to the best tight end in the country were all like screen passes. So I just think that their defense smothered him. I think, and if Drew Aller, which he is the better prospect of a quarterback than Will Howard, I just don't see like I don't think their path to winning like Jeremiah Smith won't have a huge game versus Notre Dame's cornerbacks plus Xavier Watts playing safety. I just don't see that happening in this game. If Notre Dame loses, it's because they lose the trench battle, which is possible because they have a lot of injuries on both the O line and the D line. But I think
you're on all the chat rooms and the Irish boards. I don't like. I know we were texting about it, but like I feel like in the aftermath, Angeli not getting enough credit for that drive. Like the backup quarterback, get your helmet. What's that now? Yeah, go in there against Abdul Carter. We haven't moved the ball at all with the first string quarterback. Abdul Carter's going to be in your lap on every play. Go make something happen. And he goes 6 for 7 with his head on a swivel and they get a field goal. And it really felt like, oh, they're alive. They're alive. And like, and Leonard had been struggling and, who knew what kind of, cuckoo's nest was going on in his head. But like, I was like, I don't know who's going to come out for the second half, but like it was like the backup QB gave them CPR and suddenly they were a completely different team. And that is, that's on the coach. He obviously turned it around, but I just didn't hear enough about, even in the post game, like in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, right. You're right.
The head coach giving the backup QB a shout out. Like that was nuts. 6 out of 7.
Yeah. Touche.
And recovered a strip sack too, which was also they would have turned the ball over and he found a way to keep that too. So yeah, absolutely great job by him. Unfortunately, he won't be starting next year either. Looks like it's going to be CJ Carr. But he definitely it definitely caused a spark. And again, they're a second half team, so you never really feel out of it, even though they're playing like that.